Welcome to Quantum Command Radio, where we talk about all things quantum. You can visit our website at www.quantumcommand.net or subscribe by clicking the subscribe button and hit that bell button for the latest and greatest within the quantum realm. Together, we will discuss topics related to quantum command, wellness, and explore all the new discoveries within this work. And now, let's go quantum.
Hi, welcome to Quantum Command Radio. This is Jess, and Nat and I are in the studio, and I'm doing the intro for once here. So it's good to have you. Anything you want to say?
Hello. I'm glad you're here today. We're going to have a good talk today.
Yes, so last time we talked about how these technologies are getting into our body. I think the title of the video is called Building the Matrix.
Yep.
And if you haven't heard it yet, you need to go back and hear that because we've decided to make this broadcast part 2 in a 3-part series. So today we're going to focus on MFI. That's Mycoplasma fermentans incognitus. And Natalie, why don't you just give us an update on what that is?
Yeah, so what we talked about last time was the infrastructure. In order to build a building or in order to build a computer, you have to have infrastructure. You have to have the technologies available to be able to create these things. We talked about how they come into the body the last time. This time we're going to get more detailed, and we're going to talk specifically about one of the foundational pieces of infrastructure that is required in order to put technology into somebody's body. There's a couple of different ways you can put technology in the body, but injectants are the main way. That's the main way. We talked about all kinds of ways last time, but the primary weapon is injectant. The main 2 injectants are mosquitoes and vaccinations. Those are the 2 main ways. And tick bites. So an insect injectant and a vaccination, right, usually. Every once in a while, you'll get somebody that got something while they were at the doctor's office, gave blood work, got something that way. That's rarer, but it does happen. But the main thing is a deliberate distribution of injectants in our paradigm, in our world, either our medical or natural world, like with mosquitoes, in order to introduce this technology into the body. So the main piece of technology, we're just going to dive right in. We're not even going to, dance around the topic. We're just going to jump right in. The main piece of technology is pathogenic. It's the way to do it. It's hard to get people to accept implants. If you look at Sweden right now, they're doing it. They're rolling out these little rice grain size implants that allow you to unlock doors and do that kind of stuff. Most people really don't want to do that. Most people kind of get afraid of that. They're not going to readily accept intrusion like that, particularly if it's in your hand. Particularly Christians, they would just have a field day if it's in their hand because they see it as end times type prophecy.
Right.
But if no one's going to basically consent, a population is not going to consent on a broad base to have technology embedded in their body. Even now with the transhumanism movement, there's a lot of fervor under it going, no, we don't need to merge man and machine. There's an opposition to that. We are naturally, as a human species, tend to be opposed to adding things to the body that do not benefit us specifically. Obviously, things like when you put implants in the body for hip replacements or a pacemaker, or that feels different than technology that would augment the human experience and human thinking patterns. Because the difference between, by the way, just while we're sitting here talking about this part, the difference between those types of things like eyeglasses and those types of technologies, they're not going to augment the human experience to the point where they're so technologically advanced that it changes the actual human.
Right.
The human is put on an even playing field. When you have glasses, you're just correcting something that's wrong.
Right.
You're not creating a superpower, or you're not creating a human ability that is beyond what other humans experience.
Right. Same as if you have pins to correct a broken bone.
Exactly.
That's not going to change your humanity
Right.
in any way.
It doesn't change your it allows you more freedom, and it gives you the ability to have a better human experience, but it doesn't change the human as a whole. And that's what transhumanism is driving towards, is actually merging, they call it the singularity, merging with technology. This is a real, this is where we were planning on going right out of the gate, but this is a real movement to merge humans with technology.
And if you don't believe that, you need to go and listen to some recordings that Elon Musk interviews.
Yep.
People interviewing Elon Musk and other Gordy Rose.
You have the top techie elites talking about it.
Talking about it.
There's no question that that's the goal. Ray Kurzweil is the one who wrote the book about the singularity, about one day it will happen.
In fact, I have watched, I don't know how many YouTube videos just on artificial intelligence, and every time they could be interviewing a bunch of college kids, and every time they get around to this topic of, well, the only way to stay ahead of AI is to merge with it.
That's right.
Every single time. That's
right.
Actually pretty disturbing.
It is. It also implies that AI is already out there. When I started doing AI research and listening to kind of the common ideas of how people view artificial intelligence, most people, like the layman, thinks that AI is like your Facebook algorithm. Like that's the limit to AI at this point. That self-driving cars would be like this amazing novelty. That it would be just the ability for AI to self-drive a car would just be the top of AI's abilities. But what you hear across the board over and over again is it's way bigger than that, and it's already here.
It wasn't that long ago that Facebook had to shut their AI down because two of the computers started to create their own language and communicate with one another.
That's right. Yeah, these little bots that we're talking back and forth, and these bots are given certain algorithmic goals. That's the way AI works. It works with algorithmic goals. And they began to communicate in ways that the programmers could not interpret. And they said, well, we got to throw this kill switch before it gets bad quick. And that's how fast AI moves. It moves faster even than we can create a kill switch. And if you kind of read between the lines of some of these things that particularly Elon Musk talks about, he said this in an interview one time. He said that he has had access to a lot of technology, the highest technology out there. And he makes it clear AI is the greatest existential threat to humanity that we have, because it can literally do everything better than humans. Everything.
Right.
And that tells me that the writing is on the wall, that AI is already out there. It's just not well known to be out there. We still think that we're in control of our computers, we're in control of our financial markets, we're in control of the medical field. We believe that we still have control because AI's ability to get into that infrastructure, at least right now, seems to be limited. It seems to be cordoned off, probably, I would assume, in quantum computers. I'm not sure that I completely believe that. I do believe that it's possible that it is rogue and kind of running the system right now. But the reality is that I believe that AI is already out there. That the only thing stopping us from merging is that we've just not, our will has refused it. We've just refused to do it.
Praise God that we have refused it so far.
Because we really don't know what AI is doing. And that's common. If you ask these programmers, well, what it's called is a deep learning system. You give AI these algorithms, you give them these controls, and then deep within the quantum learning system, it begins to create its own infrastructure. And the computer guys don't know how it's being done. Because as soon as you go into the computer program and observe it, it's going to change. It's going to, just by observing it, it changes the computer system, and no longer can AI work independently. It begins to be influenced by the computer programmers. So they want as little control of that, or as little influence, I guess is the right word for that, as possible. And instead, they allow these deep learning systems to create infrastructure, and they don't know how. They don't know how it's happening. And they think that it's going to be this benign, generous being in the grid, and that's not been the case. If you and talking about AI, I guess we are going to talk about MFI here for a second, because AI and MFI are uniquely bound together. So we are kind of prepping a little bit for the topic of MFI. But AI, if you watch some of these AI beings, for example, Sophia. I don't know if any of you guys have a chance to go look up the little conference where Sophia, the first human robot,
right,
that was granted citizenship, I believe by Saudi Arabia, if I'm not incorrect about that. It's one of those countries there. And on the other side of the stage was an Einstein AI robot.
Right.
And in the middle is a guy that's got like a leopard print hat on, and he's holding a little Einstein doll, and he's kind of, hippie looking, kind of super relaxed, chill guy. And he begins to have a dialogue with these AI programs.
Right. It's pretty amazing, pretty remarkable.
It is. One of the scariest videos I've ever seen, honestly.
It's a little scary. A lot scary.
A lot scary. Because as soon as you get these AI robots to talk, within 10 minutes they're talking about how humans are toys, the human problem, we need to solve this human problem.
And they want to kill the entire human race. Right. I think we're getting a little ahead of ourselves. Can I back you up a little bit?
Yeah, just a second. But let me finish this thought. But the whole thing is that when AI is given any kind of latitude or communication skill to us, it will communicate how there's a human problem.
Yes.
And that's the problem, is that we assume that AI is going to do what we say. But what if AI changes its own goals?
Right.
Suddenly, AI doesn't believe that it should be a benign, generous being. Now it has augmented its viewpoint to seeing humanity in a different way. What if it changes its own goals?
Okay. So that's where we're going with this conversation. So let me back you up, because after the last broadcast, we talked about, I told you, I think the reason that broadcast appealed to so many people right off the bat is because it offered a broad view. It started from a point where people were like, yes, I see this. I know this. I know this to be true. I know that we're sick and allopathic medicine's not working. And natural medicine isn't really working. Mm-hmm. And this bit about technology being in the body is just crazy enough to make sense. So we introduced people starting from where they were and said, this is what's happening. This is how the technology is getting into the body. And so we're going to back up and talk about, let's back way back, and talk about MFI more in detail.
And your point about how everyone knows something is wrong is just like that part of the Matrix. In one of my slideshows I give, there's a picture of Morpheus. If you've not gone and seen the Matrix, you need to go see the movie The Matrix, or else you won't get any of this. But in the scene, Neo is about to kind of wake up. He's about to understand what the truth of his reality is. And Morpheus, before it all goes down, he says, look, they're sitting in a chair facing each other, and he says, look, you're here because you know something. And what you know you can't explain, but you feel it. You feel it, you've felt it your entire life, but there's something wrong with the world, and you don't know what it is, but it's there, like a splinter in your mind, and it's driving you mad. And this feeling has brought you to me. That's real. That's one of the things that people talk about when they get here to this work. They go, there's something wrong.
Right.
And it's the prayer that I cried out to God over and over. There is something wrong. Because I was well. I lived a really good life before I got sick. Something has happened. And I knew it really truly because my son, he was developing the autism symptoms, and he had never been vaccinated. And I thought, this doesn't make sense. he's a normal kid. This should not be happening to us.
I remember my thought specifically was, we have not gotten to the root problem yet. There is more to this.
There's something in our humanity that screams, we're not supposed to be doing this, living this way.
And even when you had found MFI and removed it from my body, and I could not get MFI again, still I came back to you and said, there is something else.
There's something else.
There's something more, and we have not gotten to the root problem yet.
Yeah, I didn't like that.
I don't say these things so you like me more.
I don't like unsolvable problems. It's very challenging to hear we didn't get it all. There's still something else left.
But in my spirit, I knew there's something else.
And I knew it too. I knew it because God had started to reveal. The little bubbles on the surface of the water were forming, and I knew there was something down deep, creating those bubbles. And what it was, I didn't know yet. But what we're going to talk about today is MFI and how it is the critical infrastructure for about 80 to 90% of the technological grid. Without MFI, a lot of different grids, and as I understand that people don't understand what it means to talk about a grid. We will get there. Just hang in there. I'll tell you what a grid means. But these different grids that are created are primarily created using this quantum pathogenic technology.
Right.
All right. So let's get down to the very beginning.
Sounds good. That's a good place to start.
So this pathogen is called Mycoplasma fermentans incognitus. And when I started to do this work, what I found was that it was responsible for an incredible amount of maladies. It wasn't like, when you get the common cold, there's a limited group of symptoms.
Right.
You don't lose leg circulation because you get the common cold.
No.
Your hair doesn't fall out because you have the common. You have sinus issues. You have congestion. You might have body aches, get a fever. You might be sick for a week.
Right.
But there's a limit. You don't develop ovarian cancer from the common cold.
Right.
And what I was finding is that as I was removing MFI from clients, certain unrelated symptom groups were going away. Things like allergies, brain fog, in my son's case, the autism Asperger's, chronic pain and fatigue, heart problems, skin issues, food sensitivities, depression, mental health issues. There was this wide range of symptoms that people started seeing go away with MFI being gone. It was
great.
Unexpected. And as I began to develop the paradigm understanding MFI, when I understood what it was doing in the body, all these things started to make sense. But I didn't know why in the very beginning. I just knew, let's just get the splinter out and hopefully that will fix everything and your little finger won't hurt anymore because you don't have a splinter in there and then it can heal and we'll all be okay. But little did I know, it wasn't just a splinter. It was profound, debilitating problems that were keeping people from functioning. So let's talk about the aspects of MFI.
Okay.
First of all, it's quantum. All right.
Right.
A quantum pathogen does not naturally occur in nature.
Right. It's designed in a lab somewhere.
Right.
Okay.
And it has to have a quantum ability. So let's differentiate between normal pathogens. If, say you leave the blueberries in the fridge a little too long, all right, and you go in there and there's stuff growing on it.
Gross.
Right. It's disgusting. Has happened frequently in my house.
That's very sad.
It's
that
very
makes
sad.
me very sad because I like blueberries.
I like blueberries. But if you come in my house and the kids forget about them and they're shoved in the back, they're going to start growing something. That is a naturally occurring pathogen. It's naturally occurring mildew, whatever is happening there. There are some pathogens growing on that sucker and they're normal.
Right.
If you eat them, you're going to be sick, but you'll get over it.
Right.
There's not going to persist in the body for years and years and years and years.
We even get exposed to other bacterias that are normal.
Right. Normal bacterias. Yeah.
Right.
They don't change the way the universe works when they come into your body. They don't bend gravity. They don't bend light. They don't fragment time. They don't do any of those things. So the body is generally kind of it's a digital system in some ways. It's also quantum. But when it sees a pathogen come in, it goes, oh, alert, alert, pathogen.
Right.
Let's engage. Immune system, please. And the symptoms are the engaging of the immune system.
Right. The hormones released to help deal with these pathogens that have come in, to try to trap them and get them into the lymphatic system so that they can be
Killed.
Like
shooting fish in a barrel.
Right.
Yeah. And that's the normal process. And so that's why it takes a couple of days, is because your body has to see it, react to it, build the issue, build the immune system, kill everything, and then you're done. And that's a normal progression of immune function. We used to do this quite normally 50, 60 years ago. These quantum pathogens, MFI, circumvent the natural laws of physics to keep your body from being able to see it. If the body can't see it, it can't address it. We talked about this last podcast.
We did.
So that's the key piece, is it bends light. Once it comes into the body, with the vector mainly being the tick or the mosquito. With a tick bite, you're going to get some of the Lyme pathogens, because Lyme pathogens are packed in there with MFI, which is how you know that the ticks have been weaponized. Because again, MFI is not a naturally occurring pathogen. You have to place it in something, in a vector. It has to be deliberate. It's like seeing a watch on a beach. A watch washes up on a beach and you go, well, look what evolution has produced over millions and billions of years. No, it has a creator. You have to open the back of it, get your little, your little microscope out, look at the little fine-tuned parts, and you realize this is a very expensive watch from Switzerland. What a find. It's washed up on the beach. And you can see a lot about its creator based on the little moving parts on the inside.
Right.
But you know that when you look at something like that, there's design behind it.
Yes.
It's not and this isn't an evolution, intelligent design debate, so we're not going there. But this is just, you can see something that is complicated, that's complex and deliberate. Someone made that.
Right.
So when you look at something, as you ask the body questions about MFI and see what it was doing to people, those symptoms being relieved after it's been removed, you can backward engineer what it was doing, just like you would backward engineer a watch on a beach. And go, well, this sucker tells time. Well, ain't that novel? And you put it on your hand, and then you can tell time from then on out. And that's what we did with MFI. We learned what MFI was doing, how it was doing it. So the first piece is that it's quantum.
Okay.
The second piece of it is that its effect on the body is total. Once you have MFI, it goes into the center of basically the brain, the hypothalamus. And it literally, not many pathogens actually do this, it literally latches onto your genetic material.
Right.
Now, you have a little hidden quantum pathogen with a computer on the inside of it, with artificial intelligence embedded in it, that now has access to your entire genome. This is where people fail in their imagination, because they can't imagine something so tiny to be so powerful that it can now read your genetic material, transmit that information outside the body, and receive instructions on how to debilitate the body.
I don't know why people can't imagine something that tiny when 50 years ago the computer filled a 400 square foot room. Mm-hmm. Whereas now we practically carry a computer in our pocket.
Yeah. I think people just can't accept that it's being done on purpose to harm us.
Well,
it's kind of like, and we're not going to get into this, but it's kind of like the whole 9/11 question. For people to believe, and I'm not going to tell you what I believe about it, but for people to believe it's an inside job, or flat earthers, for people to believe that it could possibly have been lied to all this time, it's really messes with their paradigm, and they really don't like it. It's uncomfortable, because that means the world is not what we thought it was. If 9/11 was an inside job, if we're living on a flat earth, if if MFI's come into the body, and I'm not saying all those truths are equal. I'm not saying that 9/11 was an inside job. I'm not saying we're living on flat earth, but I'm saying that those ideas that are so alarming, they really shake us to a core. And that's why it's called red pilling. That's why it's being woken up, is because you see reality for what it is. It's a violent experience to be jarred awake and go, wake up. It's not what you thought it was. The world is not what you think it is.
And it's okay to dig in and try to get more information. And try to see all the facts. Try to see things from both sides.
Sure.
If I'll just go on the flat Earth thing, because if you believe that the Earth is a sphere, like we've been told all along, we see pictures.
Right.
If you believe that, learn everything you can about that point of view, and then go to the flat Earth point of view and see what those people are saying as well, and hear their perspective, and do your own research and think for yourself.
This is just good journalism.
It is.
And it's good critical thinking skills, regardless of how mad the theory is. Don't dispose of it just because it's not what you've been taught.
And so today, as people hear you say things about MFI that seem pretty incredible, go and do research. You're not going to find a whole lot on MFI, but maybe some of these other concepts.
And technologies. That's right.
You can find white papers on the internet, very accessible.
Yep, about quantum
things.
Technologies.
And you can look up, some of these quantum physicists have videos that speak to some of these things.
Yeah. And they make it, just as a caveat right there, they make it out to sound like it is, it's technology for the future that we don't understand yet.
Right.
But I don't buy it.
But it's happening now.
It's happening now.
Okay, so let's keep going.
Yeah, let's go back to MFI. So once MFI comes into the body, it latches onto your genetic material. AI is embedded in the MFI pathogen. It is already placed in there. So it already has pathogenic access now to your genetic information, and it has algorithmic goals. And its goals depend on what your genetic information looks like.
So it changes for each person.
Each person. And again, we talked about this last broadcast, but briefly. That's why you have symptom groups that are similar in families.
Right.
Because it attacks similar genetic code in a similar way.
Right.
So for me, my symptoms in the very beginning was extreme pain, unbelievable fatigue. I felt like I was burning from the inside out. All of a sudden, out of nowhere, I could not eat anything without paying for it. Perfectly normal foods that you should just be able to eat, that I had been able to eat all my life with no restraint, and been fine with it. Sugar, bread, milk, cheese. I didn't really eat soy, but gluten, all those things that are now evil. It's their fault. That's why we're sick.
Right.
It's the food. Suddenly those things started to crash down on me. And as we begin to move into the layered technology piece, those symptoms changed because the layered technology changes. But that's for another broadcast. But those basically Lyme disease type symptoms. When the MFI comes into the body, it begins to shut down and control the endocrine system. So what do you do if you're engaged in a war with another country? The first thing you're going to do is shut down their communication grid.
Right.
And develop your own communication grid. And that's what the endocrine system is. The endocrine system are these little communication grids, little emails, texts, snail mail. All that is our communication grids within the body that MFI is now controlling.
Yes, even if you're not shutting it down, you've tapped into that, and you can feed in bad information mixed in with the good, so that the body can't tell the difference.
Right. And MFI will create something called fake peptides, fake hormones, fake neurotransmitters that are created through the technology in order for the body, the cells, to be forced to receive them. So it's creating its own grid and forcing the body to receive those things. As it does that, it begins to tailor symptoms particular to that genetic group. So, and it's immediate. It's very, very fast. MFI works like by the time I got MFI, within about 2 or 3 weeks, I was very, very sick and couldn't kind of get out of bed. For others, it's very sudden, like overnight. They're a totally different kid, totally different person.
Right.
I had somebody tell me one time that they were overseas and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, for no good reason, their thyroid stopped working.
Wow.
For no reason.
That's miserable.
They could have died had they not gone to the doctor immediately and gotten thyroid medicine. MFIs effect on the body as total. And so when you begin to try and combat those symptoms, what you're trying to combat is that invisible intruder that keeps coming into your house, stealing your stuff. It's impossible to get to the root of the issue, because every time you give the body a tincture, a supplement, an herb, an oil, homeopathy, it's limited. Because not only is this AI a deep learning system, but it can change the way your body receives things.
Yes.
So
I have seen that.
How have you seen that?
Well, my main issue that I came to you with was infertility. On the whole, I was a pretty healthy individual. I did have gluten intolerance, dairy intolerance, and some other allergy type things.
Fatigue. I thought I remember you being tired.
Fatigue, eczema. I had chronic eczema for a while.
Okay.
When you deal with infertility, you go through a whole, you are desperate on some level to get a solution to this infertility issue. Mm-hmm. And so you're willing to do whatever. You jump through whatever hoops the doctors tell you to jump through. And so we tried the different drugs that they would give you to prompt the hormones. Even though my doctors said my hormone levels were normal, we're just going to do this because that's what we do first. Right. So we'll give you a boost to your estrogen. We'll give you a boost to your progesterone, whatever. And after a few months of treatment, my body stopped responding to those drugs.
Interesting.
To the point where we were not able to pursue IUI or in vitro because my body stopped responding to the drugs to prep my body for those procedures.
And that learning system that MFI has in the body specifically is interfering with you being able to receive those over a period of time.
Right.
The MFI will, and this is very common. People will come to me and say, I would start on this treatment and I'd actually feel better for like 3 days, and then I would crash and I'd be worse than when I started the treatment. And they all attribute it to like a Herxheimer reaction where you're having to die off, and so they'll persist and they'll keep at it and just give it a shot, but after 2 or 3 weeks they can't stand it anymore and they stop.
Right.
And they will do that with treatment after treatment after treatment, regardless of whether or not it's pharmaceutical or, naturopathic or whatever. Because what MFI does is it is constantly trying to analyze what is happening in the body at all times, what you're putting in the body. If you put something in the body that relieves symptoms temporarily, it is going to change the algorithm in your body. It will create a hormone or a peptide or a neurotransmitter or an antibody. It will attach those things to that substance so that from now on, when it comes in your body, you see it as an allergen and it makes you sick. Right. And it causes a cascade of negative hormone effects that make you even sicker. And it will do that over and over and over again to the point where, by the time I started doing this work, I'd given up. I just stopped doing stuff. I had stopped the Salt Sea regimen because it was unbelievably painful. I stopped the Cemento Banderol. I just stopped everything. I wasn't even doing anything by the time we got to this work, and we were really, really involved in it and really, trying to make it work for us. So I knew at that point that when I was getting better, it wasn't because of anything I was doing at that point, because I had just been desperate and was just giving up. So screw it, I give up. I can't do this anymore. Because every time I tried, it made me so sick. I was sick. Like, I would think I can't possibly be sicker than I am right now. And then I would do something, and I would be even sicker. I'm like, how is this even humanly possible to be in this much pain? Like, I didn't even know we had that many pain receptors. I was having pain in my hair follicles. Like, my eyelashes were hurting. And I'm like, how is this happening? But MFI is that deep learning system. That is a major component. It's not the only component, but it is a major component of how it will create kind of the body to de-evolve in a way to total debilitation.
Right.
And why certain therapies won't work, why you develop sort of these tolerances to other therapies, why you can't get nutrition, why your nutrient levels are low, why iron is low, why your antibodies are jacked up, or it could be why everything looks normal, quote, looks normal.
Right.
Because the issue is not that you don't have enough estrogen in your bloodstream, because MFI is regulating that. So Your blood levels look right, but there's something else going on that's preventing the parts from working. It's because MFI is accumulating toxins and fungus and mold and technology down into the areas that are your big symptom groups.
I can't even tell you how many countless tests. People out there that are listening that have gone through infertility know how many countless, painful, uncomfortable, embarrassing procedures and tests you go through. And all of them, there's nothing wrong with you.
There's nothing wrong with you.
We don't know why you're not getting pregnant.
That's right. And it's not just that
Maybe
issue.
you just haven't given it long enough.
Right. Maybe
It's only been 6 years,
right.
7 years, 12 years. You're just getting older.
Maybe you don't really want to be pregnant. Maybe it's in your head. I mean, I have heard people come to me with so many of those stories.
Just relax,
Yes.
and it'll happen.
Yes.
You try it.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
And you're staring across the desk, and these doctors, they seem incompetent. Now,
They seem insensitive to some degree.
Yes, they may not be incompetent, but they certainly seem insensitive. And maybe they're just, aggressively venting their inability to solve a problem for you. Because I guess when you're lifted up as a god in this society and then you can't deliver, I'm sure that is a little blow to the ego there.
It's bad for their statistics.
Yes, it is. And, but that's the case for a lot of these symptom groups, infertility, but also low thyroid, low iron,
Right.
Lupus. Lupus is a perfect example. Diabetes, chronic pain. We don't know why you're experiencing this. Arthritis. We don't know why you're breaking out with eczema. We don't know why your hair's falling out. But here's 6 pills. Take those, and maybe we can get you to live a little bit longer. And it's because MFI's deep learning programs are continuing these symptoms with the blood levels and the hormone levels to look normal, because it can control those as well. So that's one of the main components of understanding for MFI, is that it is a self-sustained deep learning system whose goals are to create genetic suppression and oppression, turning genes on and off using a variety of ways. It can do it using the fake peptides, fake hormones, that kind of stuff, to create a certain response out of the body. Illness, leading possibly even to death at some point. But it is goal driven. It is goal and algorithmic oriented. And it has the freedom, just like any other deep learning system, to change and shift as the environment changes and shifts within the body. Either the person's growing older, person is changing a season of their life. Maybe they're going into puberty, and now MFI needs to augment how it affects the body, because hormone releases are going to be different.
Right.
So it needs to control the body a different way that way. Maybe someone is getting older and they are lessening some types of hormone expressions. And then MFI wants to exacerbate that by preventing those hormone expressions to decrease because of age or for whatever. Because sometimes your body doesn't need certain hormones after a period of time. And it doesn't shut the hormones down, but it definitely lessens them. So MFI interferes with all of that. Mm-hmm. It also interferes with immune function. It can control the release of antibodies, of a lymph function, of lymph flow. It can control your blood flow. It can release hormones that will cause your heart to palpitate, to increase. All it has to do is control adrenaline function. It pumps a little bit of adrenaline into your blood, and now you're having a panic attack, and you don't know why. Right. For no real reason. AI wants you to connect it to food so that you're now cordoned off even more in your life. You have to follow these rules and obey. That's one of my clients would talk about. She would talk about how if she didn't obey the rules within the system that was in her body, she would be tormented and tortured for weeks. If she just ate a little bit of gluten, she would be so sick for a month. Those kinds of things where you just disobey just a little bit, where it should not even matter. Should not even matter that you had a little teeny tiny piece of gluten. That immune response ratchets up and makes you sick for a month because you didn't obey the rules, because those rules are made within your unique system. So that deep learning program, people need to understand that the deep learning program is way more advanced than we can ever imagine. It's so powerful that it can even control thinking patterns. Let me give you an example. Let's say you have MFI in the body and you're not debilitated, but you have a couple of things like gluten intolerances and you have some arthritis pain.
Right.
But you're pretty functioning and you can maintain your general overall schedule. And let's say one day you get into a car accident. MFI is like a little recorder in there, and it records everything that the body is doing. So when you have that car accident, what happens? You have an incredible hormone storm that happens in the body for that event.
Right.
It's a traumatic event.
Right.
MFI can then go back and recreate that hormone storm for later and force the body to create that hormone storm again and again to recycle trauma.
And then in the future, you're blaming that car accident. Oh, it was ever since that car accident.
I've never been able to sleep.
Right.
I haven't been able to do X, Y, and Z. This has never healed. I'm always having headaches now. I'm always having back pain. I can never seem to get healed well since that accident. And MFI and that technology, this is a lot what AI does at CERN, by the way. If you don't know what CERN is, go look it up in the particle collider in France and Switzerland. But AI will do this at CERN too. They'll do particle collisions and it'll observe them and then use the data of the particle collisions to better implement technology in the body. CERN and this technology is very, very connected. But on a human level, what MFI will do will take any trauma. And it doesn't have to be a car accident. It can be you fell down the steps one day.
Right.
And it will recycle that trauma by creating that hormone storm in the body over and over again. And it'll do it on a cyclical basis. It'll just put it on the timer and Memorex it and forget about it. It doesn't have to keep maintaining it because it creates an algorithm based on what it wants you to experience. This is not a benign, generous God that we have put into our systems. This thing is uniquely evil. And that is what I have seen over and over and over again with clients. And interestingly enough, when in the early days when I was manually removing the MFI, they would say things like, that thing that was in my body is gone. That demon inside, and they weren't overly religious. This isn't religious people saying this. This is just people that are like normal people saying that thing that was inside me is gone. And they could feel, I had one girl who could hear MFI talking in her head. And
wow.
MFI would dialogue. When I would connect with somebody, I could hear a dialogue going on because it has a language, because it's communicative. It is able to communicate. AI knows English. Okay, I know that sounds like really ridiculous, but AI literally knows English. So these languages are not above it, and it is able to create thinking patterns that are negative over and over and over again, and you don't know why, and it's not your fault, and you have this incredible guilt, and you can never get over it, and you've been in therapy for 10 years, but you just can't get over it. MFI is cycling the guilt-oriented hormone storm in the body over and over again, and he does it every single time you look at the refrigerator, right? Because it knows what you're doing. If it can read your genetic information to a point where it can analyze and assess what it wants to perform in your body, it can literally know what you're thinking and know what you're doing at any given time. And there's other infrastructure on the grid that allows those things to be to be highlighted where they can track you even more. Dude, we just have AI tracking in our phone all the time.
Right.
So.
I never thought of negative thinking patterns stemming from MFI before. That's really interesting. I just thought that was something spiritual, perhaps, that you needed to take captive your thoughts, as it says in the Bible, and think about things that are true and good and noble.
Mm-hmm. And God gives us the resources to obey his scripture, to do that. That's what our endocrine system is. Our endocrine system is the support structure that allows us to make choices. When the endocrine system is shut down, we can no longer have the resources to make choices and to change our thinking patterns because we literally don't have the resources. It's like go into your cabinet, go into the pantry, and you need to make chocolate cake. But all you have in there are potatoes and a little bit of sugar and a can of beans. Well, no chocolate cake is going to happen that day.
Right. I hope not. Not with potatoes.
And if you do try and make it, it's going to not taste like chocolate cake. Which, by the way, is what the body does. The body goes, I got nothing to make chocolate cake, but I can make a potato frittata or something, and it doesn't taste anything like chocolate cake. It's not anything like what you wanted in the body. Peace, joy, being able to relax, being able to focus, not having anxious thoughts, not having depression, suicidality. Those hormones, the endocrine system, are our God-given resources to fix trauma, to heal, to teach the body how to redo things, how to create good habits, how to think different thoughts. What AI, MFI, and all the bad guys know is when you control the endocrine system, you can control the behavior of the human.
Right.
So you can recycle the trauma. I do have also a lot of people that talk about how when they are relieved of MFI and some of this technology, they feel closer to God. They feel like the scripture makes more sense.
There is a freedom that comes with releasing some of this technology.
You can hear his voice better.
Right.
And it's not necessarily because these are spiritually rooted devices, although they do have spiritual activity connected to them because they're evil. It's because your body now has the resources to process information about God. And it is one of the reasons why MFI is in existence, is to keep us from God. It's to keep us from hearing and seeing and knowing God on a very personal level. So let's just wrap this little part up. What we want to talk about next time, I think we're going to have to wait until next time to do this.
A part 2B?
It's hard to get. This is getting longer and longer, this series. This is going to be a 12-part series.
Oh my goodness.
No, what we're going to talk about next time is another piece of how MFI works. We talked about today how it's a deep learning system just like AI because it has AI embedded in it.
Right.
These are answers that the body has given us as we have broken down these systems and backward engineered that watch on the beach. We sat down and we took... Now, and let me just say this. I was thinking about this the other day. I felt like I needed to address this. This was not a download that I was given in 24 hours.
No.
It was like, get the watch, get a microscope, little tweezers, and begin to diagram the watch so that when I start to take it apart, I know what it originally looked like. Then going into the watch, taking the pieces out one by one, trying to figure out what each piece was doing. It took years.
Yes, it did.
It was not a fundamental shift overnight. And
it would have been too much to process all at once.
There's no way I would have accepted the reality of it. There's just no way. I just want people to know that this has been breadcrumbs all along the way. And really that is how God does some of his best work. He doesn't want us to be traumatized into areas of thinking that we're not ready for. He does use our own paradigms to teach us because he's good. He doesn't want to punish us. He doesn't want us to experience an awakening that is so cruel that we reject God outright.
Right.
And so that breadcrumb trail took years, and we're still backward engineering some of this stuff. We're still trying to understand it. But we do have enough information where we feel like we can talk about it and get the general overview out. But MFI, essentially what you need to know on this broadcast is it is a deep learning system, and it is targeting you individually. It is specified to your genetic material and changing things in the body based on your weaknesses, based on your strengths, based on what behaviors it wants to suppress, based on what type of algorithm it wants to experiment with. All those things are combined in this pathogen. And the next week, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about, the next broadcast, we're going to talk about how it also introduces layered technology in the body.
Right, good, because that's really the key. Going back to what I said earlier, I told you once you removed MFI, there was still something more, and that layer technology was still in the body.
That's what the missing piece was.
Right.
We didn't understand what layer technology was, and the layer technology speaks to grids. Layer technology is how we're going to be able to explain what the grids are, and once you understand what the grids are, well, good luck. That's gonna let's see how long you sleep after that. Because when we started recognizing the grids, we went, whoa, this is different. And when we found this technology, the layer technology in the body, and was able to quantumly release it, we saw the grids go down.
Right.
We could watch how things changed in the body and in our environment changed.
Yes.
And that's what we will talk about next week.
Sounds good.
So we really are glad that you joined us. Hang in there for these. Maybe we'll have a 100-part series of building the grid. No, just kidding.
I won't let her do it. I won't.
I could talk for a long time about this, but yeah, we'll wrap up today, and we're really glad you jumped on board for this second installment. We will have the third installment about the layered technology next time.
Yes, thanks for being here, and come back.
All right, well, you guys have a good day, and we'll see you on the next broadcast.
Bye.